All right. Welcome to episode 285 of the Artcasters. This is the show where we talk about like the ins, the outs of creative illustration, graphic design, cartooning, and often cartooning, and then sometimes cartooning, and then maybe sometimes animation. um, and we have a special guest on, a return guest, friend of the show, to talk about, I think, like a really important thing for creatives, which is rearranging and keeping up the fight in art. Because often, like, we're all juggling life, and life gets messy, and so I think this will be a topic that probably repeats a lot on this show. Is like kind of navigating all that messiness and like how do you redefine, how do you kind of do that. And luckily Mike was down to come on the show and talk about this cool stuff. So let's do the go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Joshua Kemble. Just straight up, I'm going to be pretty like, I may be less on point today because I spent all day yesterday with the kind folks at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach. Great comic book shop, amazing people, but I was there from like 8 to close to like 9 to 10. And then I didn't actually get home till like midnight, worked a shift, and then did like a thing at a hospital for like 4 hours today. So I'm a little out of it, but I just wanted to be upfront about that. Transparency is everything. So, yeah, you're on my channel, so you know where to find me. And if you're curious right now, I can't believe I'm saying this. And it's funny because I sound like a used car salesman, but Amazon is weird. I found out more about this too. So I guess Amazon kind of games pricing on specific books. And usually it has to do with the sales of the books. Like if the books seem like they're selling really well, sometimes Amazon will do these like absurdly crazy discounts just to keep a competitive edge. And also on the hope that people will do add-ons, right? So they'll like discount books beyond like to where they're using it as like a loss leader to improve sales and also improve the ranking of the book, which is cool because from what I gather, I think I get the same exact royalty and cut from every book sale. So I am thinking like, I like Amazon sometimes, but they can be unethical sometimes. So I feel like a really good way to stick it to the man is order 2 stories on Amazon and then don't buy anything else. Just order 2 stories. If you have Prime, especially because you're literally like, I can't believe it, but they're selling them for like $2 now. It's like $2 now. Yeah. I feel like it's becoming like a joke. But
I had to pay $3 for mine.
I know.
And they're limiting the number of books that you
I could only buy one.
Yeah, it's weird. You can't buy them in like huge quantities. And I think they put like a limit on the quantities because I'll be fully transparent too. I've bought like 4 of them because I was like, this is cheaper than I can get it from my own publisher. So like, I'm going to buy them to like resell,
But you have to like buy one a day.
I mean, that's like absurdly cheaper than I even get from like very much cheaper than I get from my own publisher. So I will just say like it's a really I want to be really clear because I had one friend, like really good friend with well-meaning, kind of be like, oh, you need to drop your literary agent. You need to drop that publisher because they're just terrible. And I'm like, no, this isn't my literary agent or my publisher. This is just Amazon and their nutty thing that they do. So it doesn't hurt me in any way. It actually benefits me. So take advantage of it. Like I have no problem with people saving money and getting to read my book. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry for the long plug. I just felt the need to clarify that because some people have been feeling like, oh, I feel bad like ripping him off. And it's like, no, this benefits me a lot. So go out there. If it lets you buy 5 copies and give them to friends for Christmas, I mean, it retails at $19.99. So just to say, like, it wouldn't be a bad present to give someone for like $2, and it's literally like, I don't know what you can get for $2 nowadays, but apparently you can get like a graphic novel, which is crazy. I'd be all about that. So
what I think everybody should do is they should get all of their friends and family to each buy one. Right?
Hey, yeah, I mean, I have no like again, I just feel like it's $2. So hey, like, have at it, like have as much fun with it as you can, and know that like every sale obviously helps me. And then I would say, like, if you enjoy it, since you only spent $2, like maybe take like a minute to like leave a good review or something, if you haven't already. A lot of people already have, but yeah, anyhow, long plug short, but I definitely wanted to clarify that so people know I'm not like getting taken by this. And I might think the same thing if I
It's
saw
probably
it. So.
going to increase your sales rank. I know you looked at it a little while ago. And
Oh,
it
yeah,
was-
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, hey, I'll take it. Like, if they want to make my... Yes. And sadly, it was probably at full value then. But that's awesome.
Definitely was.
You're like, I spent like $20 on this thing. Oh, yeah. And I appreciate, like, honestly, everybody who got it. I hope people who paid full price don't feel ripped off by it. This is definitely not a permanent thing, but as long as it's there, I'm going to like hype the hell out of it, because like my goal is like, I don't want you guys to have to spend like, 20 is great, and that's what I have to charge. Like, if I sell at like a store or something, that's what I have to charge. But if I can save you guys money and like still make the same amount, why not? So, and also it's just a funny way to stick it to the man. So go out there and stick it to him. All right, Scott, what do you have going on? Can you talk about the thing you showed us or no?
I think I can. I don't want to. I'm not going to show it, but
Yeah.
I think I can mention it, because I did ask, and the comic store owner, and they said I could. So
okay.
Yeah. So there's an Image Comics title called Ice Cream Man. It's a horror anthology, which I'm a big fan of horror anthologies. And I just did a variant cover for it. I just submitted it, and it got approved, and it's pretty cool. It's sort of an homage to the Candyland board game. So if you can imagine what that looks like, but it doesn't. I don't think it comes out to August. Sadly, it doesn't come out till after Free Comic Book Day. So I was hoping I could bring it to Free Comic Book Day, but I'll just be able to do a signing on Free Comic Book Day and come back and do another signing after that. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. So just something to pay attention to in the future. And what else? Yeah, just you can find my stuff at Serkworks.com. You can find my course, Making Comics 101, on YouTube. It is a free course on YouTube. It takes you every step of how to make comics, from coming up with your idea all the way to the finished product, printing it and publishing it, getting it out there, and all the steps in between. So it's a pretty robust course, and like I said, it's free on YouTube. So there's no other course like it on YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah. I second
Maybe
that.
anywhere.
I also want to say that we all saw like a little sneak peek of Scott's cover art, which you guys will not be able to see because we're special and you're not. I'm just kidding. You guys are very special to us. But I will guarantee you, I am so excited for when he can show it to you guys, because it's just awesome and just great and
really
full of a lot of fun Serkland stuff, So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we'll go to Corey, because Corey is pretty much our official other co-host, I'd say, at this point. So Corey, where can people find your work and all that fun stuff?
Nowhere. I'm going on month 4 of this 2.5 month project, and it's consuming every waking moment of my life when I should be sleeping. So there's nothing to show ever.
Well, you do show sneak peeks of that project. Where can people find that?
They can find it at CoreyKerr.com, and if you go to Instagram or whatever, I don't know. There's stuff coming. I've got some good stuff lined up. I'm just like I'm in that like almost done dip where you're like you've been pedal to the metal for so long, and then right as you're about to finish, your body and mind are like, just give up. That's where I'm at. So anyway, but yeah, no, you can find stuff at CoreyKerr.com. You can watch things I've completed in the past there, and it's already done, and I don't have to think about that. So you can enjoy the things that are finished at CoreyKerr.com. So yeah, go.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to sell this a little better because Corey's too humble. So he's the most humble. He's told me that a million times. I'm just kidding. But no, like Corey posts like these really great snippets of his work while he's working on it, especially Instagram. I really encourage people, like, obviously go to CoreyKerr.com, but check out his Instagram, because not only that, but like I think it's a really good model of how to do a really good Instagram. Like I think I feel jealous of the way that he does his Instagram. Like, it makes me realize like mine is probably pretty boring because my process photos are like, here's some file names. Look at that. I got that done. And Corey's got it like formatted and great and really, it's just super great. And it's cool because you also get these like little snippets and sneak peeks into his animation process and stuff. I want to say also just thanks to Thomas, Jim, Gary, and Jim too. I guess there's 2 Jims. For they said they picked, like 2 of them said they picked up another copy, and one of them was like, I still feel bad though. Don't feel like you're sticking it to the man. That's the way to do it. All right, Mike is our 4th and our guest for the night. This is Mike Emeritz. He's a really, I mean, you guys are really, if you're familiar with Artcasters, you're familiar with Mike Emeritz. But he used to run the hundreds and did a really good job at it. Edited like 2 hugely complex, heavy anthologies. Great, just like cartoonist, stop motion animator, kind of all over artiste. And we're lucky to have him on the show. And brought, like, I think this topic's going to be really good. But Mike, where can everybody find your work and see sneak peeks of like Sisyphean Complex and all that stuff?
Oh, sneak peeks of Sisyphean Complex. Most likely Instagram.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to push for more sneak peeks.
So many sneak peeks yet to be had. I've snuck them away for now. But yeah, Instagram, totally. I that seems to be my home. I stopped posting on any kind of other sites. I used to have a DeviantArt and ArtStation and all that. I don't care. It's all Instagram for me all day. So yeah, Instagram at my full name, and that's about it. You can go to my site too, Sisyphean Complex. That's actually kind of like, I consider it more like a portfolio. So you can kind of see a lot more like the finished stuff that I've done, commissions. There's links to the different books and stuff and stuff like that. But Instagram is where it's at. It's an easy format. You click a button, your post goes up. You can hold a little button and make little videos sometimes. It's pretty good with the Clip Studio time lapse. I've been experimenting with that. So yeah, Instagram for sure.
I love it, and I'm excited. And I'm one of those, like, I'm gradually I'm gonna devolve into a complete boomer pretty soon with my understanding of things like Clip Studio. So I like my admiration for people who are keeping up with the times is pretty awesome. All right, so Mike, like, what comes to mind about the topic, and like you know, why don't you talk just a little bit about like sort of the journey you've been on as an artist in like the last year and stuff.
All right.
Is that specific enough, or should I get more specific?
I don't know. It might have been a little too broad for me. A long time ago, once upon a time.
Yes, tell me about.
Before the war ended.
No. Let's back up and start with your great grandparents and move from there.
Okay.
I guess.
Small feet. I can only barely remember the first bit of light coming through my mother's womb.
All right, so I guess to be more specific, it's like, I think you've been through some ups and downs and struggles as an artist, and lately it seems like you're on a real creative boom and kind of back to high productivity and output and stuff. And just, you know, talking to you feel like more centered and ready and rocking. And I've experienced that like multiple times where I've had like a kind of like a slump or like something happen and then like things reframe. And for you, I mean, you've been hit with like a lot of challenges, like hand issues, like just I can't even name the amount of awesome challenges you've kind of overcome. So I guess maybe starting there might be good, where it's like, you know, how do you deal with like when you're kind of coming from scenarios of like so many challenges that you've had to face? How do you kind of approach like rearranging or reassessing and then kind of fighting through it, right? And still making art, because you're still putting out a lot and it's quality work. Everybody should check it out. It's really good work. But yeah, so like, how do you kind of approach that? Like, And then also what drives you to kind of keep making art and kind of fight the fight of making
fire
art.
And intense.
Is that better?
It won't go out. Yeah. Oh, so okay. The hand thing is a really, really good place to start, because in the current timeline, that's actually probably the beginning of sort of a chain of events. I'll kind of just rewind just a touch to kind of put that hand thing in the right context and the right perspective, because that actually came off the back of kind of another period of regathering and reevaluating and picking up the pieces of something else. Because I had started down this comic path, and when I started doing the hundreds and stuff, when I first met all you guys, that was coming off of a similar kind of, one of those moments in life where you're kind of stuck. You don't know what the heck it is that you're doing. I was incredibly unhappy in my career, which led to me kind of saying, hey, I want to do something for me. Like, what is it that I really want to do? How can I use my skills, my talents to do something that I can put myself on the page, instead of trying to figure out what all these other people want and do what it is that they want, all the client stuff. What the hundreds were laying down at the time was really resonating with me. And as anybody who has come from that era of the challenge, a lot's changed since then, but I think especially in that era, it spoke to people who were kind of in an industry, if not in comics, in some other industry, working for somebody else who doesn't have a clue about anything creative, but is trying to squeeze it out of you. And, it was like a war cry of like, no, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to do what I want. I know about color. I know about line. I know about all this stuff. Like, I'm going to make something cool. And so that's a really big thing to commit to. It just is. You don't just quit your job, drop everything, and say, hey, I'm going to make comics for a while and not take on other stuff, or not, try to pursue some other, career path. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the hardest thing you can do in art, and that makes very little money even when you make it to the top. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that. So it was a big thing. And I learned a lot from everybody that I met. I learned a lot from Scott, from Kevin, from Gaz, from Peter, everybody that was doing the challenge at the time. I was like a sponge. I was soaking it up. And it put me in an awesome direction. I mean, it made it easy for me to kind of pick things up and move forward, because I think, to answer a piece of your question, the key for me, at least, when kind of reorganizing and figuring out what to do, is having a good support network. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be people that you know really well, but just people that know the journey well, people that know where it is that you're trying to go, that was key. I learned so much from all you guys, and I learned things that seem obvious now, but they weren't then. And I really felt prepared, and I felt kind of ready to go. I knew the problem areas I had to tackle in my skill set and in my kind of way that I go about things. I knew I had a plan, though. And then the hand thing happened, and oh man, that was soul crushing. It was absolutely soul crushing. For those of you that don't know, I ended up with this crazy injury and this was during my first attempt at the being guest at our parody version of the 48-hour art check. We did the 168-hour art check. So I love
that. I still miss the. Didn't you guys have you guys had a song, and it was amazing for the intro?
They improv the song each time.
Yeah.
That was the best part, is that they didn't have a song. They just pretended like they did an improv it each time, and it was gold.
It was really gold. I kind of missed those, actually. Anyhow, go ahead. You guys should check that out, though. The great thing about YouTube, right, is you can see a lot of those on Mike. Did that alternate between yours and Gaz's channel, or was that all on yours?
I think we did. Yeah.
So check out Mike Emeritz on YouTube. If you dig back, you can find him. And then also Gaz Gretzky, who's an awesome artist as well. And you guys should all be subscribed to him too. So yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anyhow, so you guys started doing the parody, and it was great. Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And I was about ready to dive into Sisyphine Complex. We had finished up the first anthology, which was awesome. That was a great experience. It kind of taught me a lot about a number of things, so I felt way more prepared and ready to go to do my own comic and like go do a fully solo thing and just dig into it. And at that time, Jim Lee was doing his Twitch stream like in full force. So I was also watching Jim every day and really picking up a lot about like just how he goes about having a 6 to 8 hour day and cranks out a comic page, which was also inspiring. I actually still have it up here. I made like a Jim Lee boot camp. I was taking notes about things he was saying, and I was trying to follow along with him to like finish a page in a day and stuff. So I was going hard, and I was serious about this. It felt like this is my time, my moment. I got a 5-year plan. This is about like year 2 or going on 3. This is the time, man. Let me just dive in, crank out this work. I'll come out the other side. I'll have at least a finished issue, and we'll see where it goes. I'll take it to conventions. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll do everything that everyone else is doing that I've been excited to try and get out there, and do. And then it was like a few episodes in, I started having some really bad hand pains, which throughout my life, I've always kind of had a little bit of carpal tunnel once in a while. I think a lot of people do that grew up in my generation because we've been on computers the whole time and haven't evolved yet to
old school Nintendo games too that just relied heavily on like tapping buttons as quickly as possible. Probably didn't help our fingers.
For me, it was Mortal Kombat. I'm sitting there in wrist braces still playing Mortal Kombat. Like, what the heck? But yeah, it was getting bad, and these cramps were getting to the point where after I would be drawing, like my hand was starting to like curl up and twist into like weird shapes and stuff. So I was getting really concerned. Like, this isn't good at all. This can't be, normal. Is this like a disease that's like creeping up on me? Or like, what is happening? And so we called the 48 or the 168 quits because I was just getting embarrassed showing up episode after episode, kind of like on air. I was sort of trying to play it off like I just got busy or I didn't get enough done. But off air, I was like, dude, what the hell is going on with my hand? This is scary. Like, what is this? And I couldn't stand the embarrassment of showing up all the time doing that. So that started a horrible time in my life. I was going back and forth to doctors over and over again. Nobody knew what was wrong. I had x-rays. I had electrolysis tests where they were shooting like, electric through my fingers to try to see how my nerves and stuff were working and if all that was working properly.
Those hurt.
Yeah, it was not fun. And they make your muscles move and you're not moving it. Oh, yeah, that was interesting. And so they had me hooked up to all kinds of stuff like that. I had to do it a few different ways too, just normal. And then another one that was kind of under a machine that was like recording while it was happening. And they didn't find anything. And it was really like looking like this was just some mystery thing that's just taking me out of the game. And so I'm a very like work driven person. I know that, what I do, working from home isn't something that everybody gets to do. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do this. I understand that, but I work very hard. And when I wasn't able to, my mind immediately went to like, well, this sucks. I would like to just curl up in a ball and cry about this, but what else can I do? What can I do right now that I can at least justify, that I'm doing something? And so that's actually when I decided to do Uber and do that for a while, which turned out to be a horrible mistake. That was the worst job.
Okay. Sorry, let me interject here. First off, like Frank is trying to encourage Corey's logo to grow even more, and Corey said his logo was growing to assert his dominance. And then Frank, stop encouraging Corey, man. And then more related to what you were talking about, Nero Iru, I apologize if I mispronounced that, said true life horror, which is 100%. Yeah. And we talked to Mike a lot during that process too, and it's just like it is literally. I had I just want to clarify to people like how bad what you went through is, because I had like a very small taste of it in my non-drawing hand, where I had to get like wear a brace and get like a cortisone shot, and then hopefully the pain doesn't return. I do feel it coming back a little bit sometimes, and it freaks me out because I literally like I play guitar, and it's something I get a lot of joy from, and that was just off the picture because it's all in this section. So like just using my thumb wouldn't let me close my fingers, and I just want to say like, and that was only dealing with it for like a few months, but there were nights where like the pain was so bad I couldn't sleep. Like
that's the weird thing. Like once it's a problem, it's a bad problem.
Yeah. And then the thing about fingers and nerve pain there is like it translates to like everything, because there's so many actions that you use your hands for outside of art. And there is nothing more frustrating. I think we might have all had some experience like that, but like having your mind and your body be used to working in a certain way, and just having your mind there, everything's working, and your hands just like, nope, not going to do that. And you're like, what the hell? Like it is insanely frustrating. It's a bit identity crushing. And I got a very small taste of it. And it wasn't even my main drawing hand. It was like my shortcuts, were hard to do. And so, what
use like kitchen utensils to like eat food and stuff, or open jars. Like it got to a point where even basic stuff was just out. I just started holding my coffee mug with the opposite hand. It was messed up.
Yeah,
I don't wish it on anybody.
Yeah, dude, that is no joke. Sorry, back to your story. So
I was kind of getting on that for a little long anyways, but the wind up was that was a good long 6 months of total no art, no drawing. My career is over. This is not going to get better. This is life now. And so I was doing Uber at the time, which made me absolutely miserable, which I'll touch on that maybe later, but basically I have no sense of direction. I have no business being a cab driver and Uber driver. I don't know why I decided to do that, especially in Chicago, where everyone you pick up that's from the area has a different idea of how they want you to go. And I'm like, just let me follow the app, please. I don't know where Jackson is or what East or West is. Just let me take you there. I promise you'll get there.
And then also like Chicago, depending on the sections, if you're driving in a high traffic area, you're not getting like the friendliest people, like
no. There was a lot of politics at the time too, where taxi cabs hated Uber drivers.
Oh, so you're cutting out a little bit.
Random. It was like crazy taxi. They would try to run me off of the road. Can you hear me?
Wait. Okay. Yes, we hear you now. So you were saying cabs were trying to drive you off the road? I'm sorry. I don't want to divert, but that's
legitimately.
Oh my gosh. That okay, you need to do an autobio comic at some point.
Uber insignia. I started actually. That was something that was kind of keeping me sane. I had a little sketchbook, and so when I'd be sitting at the airport or wherever other kind of depot that I would hang out, I was trying to get some ideas out. The drawings were horrible. I couldn't make anything look like anything, but the ideas were out, and I was seriously considering that for a while. But that was a long time. And I ended up seeing a doctor who, got me into physical therapy, and thank goodness I got that physical therapist, because it was her that really helped me. She was looking in a whole different direction than any of the doctors were. All the doctors were scanning my hand from here to about here, and what the physical therapist found out is the problem was actually here. It was all these, and it was like severe muscle strains and just like. It was basically years and years and years of doing these tiny little movements like this, which you don't think about. But if you like hold your fingers there and you do them, you're like, oh, wow, I'm using that muscle like crazy. And she just dug in, and it was the most painful experience I've ever had in my life. But she got all those knots out and taught me some exercises and stretches and all that. And the rest is history. But that was already almost a year at that point. which a year not drawing at all is a really long time. So I had a lot of rust that I had to shake off. I had a lot of habits that I needed to rebuild, and I was kind of already beaten down, Yeah. And so Gaz actually was the one that had the idea that, like, hey, even though you can't draw, maybe, you did a good job with the first anthology. Maybe you could do another one. Maybe you could, still be in comics like that, like facilitate it for other people. So it was because of him that I decided to even entertain the idea at all about the second book. And the rest is kind of history, because, in the process of working on the book, I was in physical therapy. Things were getting better. I wasn't going to do a story in it, but I was making so much progress that I thought, well, 4 pages, I could probably do 4 pages. And we just so happened to not have enough to fill. We had some people drop out that time, and so we needed to have some stories to fill. So we plucked some at random. We tried to follow through with some people. They didn't want to follow through for one reason or another. And then I ended up saying, hey, you know what? We need a story. I'm just going to do it then. And if I can, great. If I don't, then, no problem. We still got a bunch of other people. And luckily I ended up being able to do that.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, because I think a lot of people who follow this ended up getting that book. And it's like, however you feel about it now, it's like, I still think the thing that blew, I think, Scott and Corey and all of our minds about it was like, it's literally like one of the strongest illustrated comics in that anthology, with like so much cool concept work and stuff. And it's like the work you were doing, considering like the amount of time and stuff. I also just wanted to touch on, because this is about like sort of reorienting and reframing.
Yeah, I'm on like a tangent.
No. It's a good tangent. Yeah, it's a good tangent because, like, I feel like I've definitely had different points in my life where, and I think creatives have this a lot, where we find our identity quite often in our work and what we offer artistically. And so any situation like where, your control over that is disabled in some way or another, it's extremely identity disorienting. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it can be like a real, because I had the thing that I'm writing about where I like got jumped and my work stolen and I couldn't walk for a couple months. And, I had to like remake pages and stuff, but just the idea that like people could come and just steal the 5 or 6 years of work in like an instant, it was a real identity thing. And I remember, the only reason I bring it up, I'm not trying to kind of switch focus to me. I'm more just thinking like I empathize with like what that must feel like to have gone through that, because just having moments where you don't get to have that art to be like, hey, this is my identity, and like have to kind of find grounding and like reroute and reset is very like difficult to do. And so I think that's why I don't think it's like a tangent. I also want to say I'm trying to be better at keeping up with the chats too in Artcasters. So Gary was saying physical therapy is a godsend.
Oh, yeah.
He was saying basically you can avoid stuff like that with good posture, biomechanics, ergonomics, but it's tough if you have a job where you do the same sort of thing all the time. It's extra tough, and I totally agree. Yeah. Although I will say, man, if you guys out there, especially if you're young artists and you're just starting out, like maybe do like just kind of do some like hand exercises for sure. Like get a squeeze ball, get the putty, like just anything you can do to kind of strengthen your hand and like kind of get it used to it early on will prevent a lot of pain later on.
Yeah, treat it like you're going to be a runner. Like stretch, just stretch before you do it. Build that habit early, because it's a hard habit to build. Even after being injured, even after being out of the game for over a year, like I still forget to stretch like an idiot, and I know that I should, but it's just, man, that's something that like you just really have to build that habit. It's not something that seems intuitive.
Sorry, I just saw what Jim typed. He said, just empathizing with us. He said, sometimes I want to take out my Lamborghini, but my Tesla is blocking it. It's so frustrating. I can relate. Sorry.
That would be great.
Yeah, Frank was saying my Porsche is always blocked by my Camaro. Anyhow,
Oh, yeah.
all right. So yeah, so Mike, like back on that, like what do you kind of where'd you go? Like so you edited the anthology, made the short part.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
from there?
So I'll try and be a little bit more brief because I do tend to kind of ramble and take some time. There's just so much has happened since I've talked to you guys. It really has been quite a crazy journey. But so we did the anthology. It's a little kind of inside knowledge, I guess, but there was a little controversy surrounding the anthology, especially early on. We kind of butt heads with a couple members and stuff early on because of what we chose the name, how we chose the name, which it is what it is. It can be kind of perceived as we chose it out of spite, and in a way we kind of did, because it was like, hey, screw this person who was kind of like being nasty towards the group over some interior drama, and that it bummed me out. It bummed me out, and I'm a person that I'm trying to be better with this now, because I understand a little better. Like, you can't please everybody. Not everybody's gonna like you. Every decision that you make, not everyone's gonna be behind it 100%. And I actually ended up kind of losing a friend over that situation. They felt very, very, very strongly that we should not have gone with that title, and that we should have, done something else instead, and that there was something about doing that was cruel, and he didn't want to be a part of it. And some other people went with them too, which it was hard for me. It was really hard mentally. It was hard for me. It was a really tough thing for me to come to grips with, even during that book. That whole time I was having a lot of conversations with people that are close to me, and in the admin group of the hundreds as well, of like, did we do the right thing? Is this, I feel bad about this. Like, yeah, I still feel we did the right thing and that this is okay, but obviously someone else doesn't, and that is not sitting well with me. And that kind of stuff rips me apart. It just does. I like trying to be a middle ground kind of guy. I like getting along with everybody. I like seeing things from everyone's perspective. So it's really hard when people kind of write me off. It's hard for me to take that, because I'm like, what could I have done? And so that was kind of the first, and kind of what became a bit of like an unraveling for me for a period. So we got through the book and all was well, but a little bit of that sort of situation spiraled out and kind of came back again at a later date when we were actually releasing the book. And I'm not going to get too deep into it. It happened in the chats. It was just referential. It was like, okay, the book is coming out. I have a feeling this person's going to bring up the title again, and they did, and I had to explain myself again, and it was just sort of like, the walk of shame once again. Like, you've done a bad thing. I think you've done a bad thing. I'm going to make you acknowledge that bad thing again. And so I was like, all right, fine. I get it. I'll entertain it. I'm going to stick with my guns. This is why we chose the title, and there we go, moving on. But it really stuck with me afterwards. And it made it harder to do the book, because I no longer felt like everyone was behind it 100%. I felt like I was losing favor in people's eyes, that like I was being perceived as something that I didn't think that I was, maybe this mean, cruel person or something. And it just, I don't know, man, it really, really bummed me out, really messed me up. So anyways, it wasn't quite on my A game when it was time to like promote and all of that. But luckily, we had an awesome group of people involved in that book. So everybody was pulling their weight on that. I think it still went absolutely well. Sales-wise and numbers-wise, we did at least as good as the first book, which is awesome, because we had multiple people on it, or we had more people on it. So to still be able to get the same amount of books out and stuff was awesome. I think it did great, and people seemed to really enjoy it. But I made a couple mistakes editorially that, I felt, it still bugs me today. If you have a copy of the book, there's some mistakes that yes, I know they're there, and they will haunt me till the end of time.
Here's the
But-
trick, though, Mike. Like anytime you have a finished printed book, that's it. That's the book.
I know.
So keep those mistakes in mind if you ever do a second printing. Other than that, just be confident because those mistakes are there.
There's like a backslash in the middle of a word, like stuff that I should have totally caught. But
I've had that.
Man. So it was what it was. But the amount of work that goes into those anthologies, it's a lot. It's a hard thing to even explain. And so, with the kind of mental exhaustion from the controversy and the drama that unfolded, combined with the work of trying to put out the anthology, and then in the middle of that, my wife actually lost her job, which she had for over a decade. It was a great job. She loved it. It was kind of the only reason that we were staying in Chicago. It kind of gave us an anchor, and it gave us options too. That job is the only reason that I was allowed that kind of time, that time to, I don't want to call it play, but to take a chance, to quit what I was doing in film and try to do this thing and make this work. It's the only reason that was able to happen, was because of that job. It had a time limit to it. It wasn't hey, just do what you want forever. It was, we could afford for you to take this calculated risk for X amount of time. And if you can manage to do this kind of thing by this time, then great. If you can't, then you're going to have to go and do freelance again. You're going to have to go and get some other kind of work. And so this was like right after I got back on my feet from recovering from the hand thing. My time is running out. I've used up nearly a year because of the hand thing, and I'd already used up 2 years. So I've got less time. And now she's lost that job. And I mean, I was in panic mode because I had been pursuing getting a penciling gig at the time too, which luckily fell through. Luckily, all of them fell through. Which I guess happens, but I had to finish that book. That wasn't just for me. I owed that to everybody else. So I was also finishing this book, putting it together, marketing it, getting it ready for print and printing and distributing, while our life just kind of paused and was on the brink of falling apart. And we had to find a new place to live. We had to find work. We had to figure out where we're going to live, how we're going to get there. We don't own a car, and we can't live in the city anymore because it's really expensive. And any job you get going from one to the other, you're not as likely to make the same amount as you did then. It was a horrible time, really bad time. I'll skip through all the specifics and the details, but I went into a whole other kind of mode that I've never been in my life, and managed to get us a van so that we could move. I made a lot of decisions. Mel was kind of just broken at that point. I mean, she talk about lost. That was her world. She loved that job, that she ate, slept, and breathed it. To not have that was devastating to her. So she kind of just fell into sort of a shock, just shell shocked. And so I just kind of had to get us through it and get us from A to B. I tried thinking on my feet, thinking, well, let's go to a place that's a little cheaper, that makes our options are a little bit more open, and we have a little bit more means to make this work. And so we moved south. We moved down to the country, which is crazy, but it's been wild. We didn't know where we were moving though, and we ended up moving into a really bad area, which was awesome because that kind of continued the domino effect of chain reaction of stuff that I've been dealing with, which was about the time when I started doing the 48-hour art check with Corey. And as Corey knows, we had backup music frequently in my apartment complex.
The challenge section was super interesting because you're like, oh yeah, there was a riot outside of my house today, and I had to stand guard in my apartment. yeah, stuff I'd never had to deal with, and I lived in Chicago for like my whole life. I'd never had to deal with that. I really hadn't. But yeah, within the first week we were there was a shooting that we learned was a part of a meth operation that was going on, and a massive drug bust.
we had to call the police regularly for people breaking into our car, or literally just looking out the window seeing people casually breaking into other cars. This is like a regular thing.
I also empathize with this because, like, my wife and I, when we were first together, we lived in a very bad part of Long Beach, which is funny because Long Beach is weird. It's like if you walked like 2 streets from there, it's great. It's excellent. But we were on like a street where there were common shootings. I literally saw a person get in a fist fight with a car and then the car fight back, which was not pretty because the guy flipped over the car. I saw we had a resident schizophrenic who lived outside of our window who used to say things about what she wanted done to her body, like literally like leaning against the alleyway, which was the wall of our apartment, to say that stuff, and just all to herself, but at the top of her lungs till like 4 a.m. Yeah, a lot of drugs, a lot of shootings, a lot of sirens and a lot of cop calls, and yeah, it's
maddening. You know, then it's
what's weird about it and maddening is until you're out of the situation, you almost accumulate to it and don't even realize how bad the situation is. It's weird.
I had something happen recently where I mixed up the pharmacy that I needed to pick up a prescription from, and I ended up going to my old pharmacy, and so I had to drive through our old town.
And you're like, how? Yeah.
Why did we go here? Why?
Right?
Like, how did we not see with this? Like, it's clear as day. We're not in the right part of town here. What were we thinking?
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, you just sort of, you know, write off all this stuff that's like all the clear signals, like, do not move here. Like, there could be signs literally just painted like, do not live here, and you're like, but the rent's pretty good.
Windows, that's your first clue. You don't want those. Oh man. Yeah, but I mean, and you know, in retrospect, we really didn't have a choice, because when we moved down here, we had a very specific budget in mind.
Oh yeah.
Looking within that budget, it was the weirdest experience I've ever had looking for an apartment. So many places down here, they wouldn't even send a rep to go with you. They would just stay with you on the phone, and they would tell you what the apartment was. It was always unlocked, and you would just walk around and you'd be on the phone with somebody, and they'd say, if you have any questions, you know, just let me know. And we were looking at places where like the door was obviously kicked open. Just, like, what? No, I don't want to live here. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Or the best one yet, there was this weird little, I don't even know what to call it. I guess it was an apartment, but the front door had a glass pane that was kind of precariously balanced. And as we opened it, the glass pane fell out and smashed onto the floor. That was, you know, great way to start. And we decided, all right, well, you know, that can happen. We won't hold that against them. Let's explore some more. We get into the little entryway, and there's this mattress up against the wall for some reason, full of stains, and it doesn't, there's no sign of life. Like, there's no sign that like, oh, someone's moving, or this is like, no, this lives here. This thing is here all the time. So that was fine. And then we look down a little further into the stairwell where we have to go to look at the apartment that we're supposed to see. And there's water covering more than half of the remainder of the staircase leading up to the door that we're supposed to go to. And it looks like it's been there a while. There's like scum on it and stuff. Like, what? There's an apartment down there? What, does Merman live there? What are you kidding?
That actually was like Aquaman's secret hideaway.
Yeah. Like, that's a little damp. Might have to clean the carpet, but you know, it'll be fine.
That is craziness, man.
So I know why we ended up there, but
yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Just wanted to, there was something really cool in the chats, and now I've lost track of it. Never mind. Keith said, I have both 100 anthologies. If not for that group, I would have never finished my comic. Which I totally agree. And Mike did a killer job putting together those things. That was a lot of work. And then I think that's about it. Okay, cool. So thanks. There's so much going on in the chats. I'm trying to engage, make sure we're getting all the chats, but it's awesome to see an active chat. So okay, so like you guys end up at this apartment. It's kind of crazy.
Absolutely crazy, yeah.
And you're also like, again, like, I don't know if people understand, like, if you fulfilled books, that's a job in itself. And doing fulfillment of books on top of like moving, it's like, moving's listed as like one of the most stressful events anybody can go through, and then fulfilling books at the same time, that sounds insane.
Yeah, it really was. And of course things had to go wrong with that process too. We had books get misprinted at one point, so we had to get them reprinted and redelivered. The UPS guy hated me. He brought them up the first time, he did not the second time. So there was that. But that whole experience, that whole apartment experience, was one of the worst of my life. It was a daily kind of mental bludgeoning is the best way that I could describe it. It was traumatizing, and it seems, small, but sleep is important, and not being able to get it ever, as it starts to take a toll on people. And I really didn't feel like I was in a good place mentally at all while we were living there, because I was lucky to get maybe 4 hours of sleep, angry, which is a different kind of sleep. It's not like you're trying to sleep, but you're not. And then you finally do. And so it was rough. It was really rough. The break-in rattled me. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. We had, it was a particularly crazy night. They were getting really nuts outside, and then a group of them hopped the fence and tried to break into our place. And for the first time in my life, I actually considered gun ownership and started looking into it and all of that kind of stuff. Even my brother-in-law, who's an avid gun enthusiast, was, he was basically on call that entire year that we lived there. Like, hey, if that ever happens again, give me a call, I'll come over. It was a nightmare. I don't know what more to say about it other than that. I mean,
yeah,
it's daily, whatever you think it might be, it was worse. It was just never ending. So anyways, we did get out of there, and we made it here, which was awesome. We figured out that it was cheaper for us to buy a house than to continue to rent here, and that we could actually own something. And so we took advantage of that and pulled the trigger. We started looking at houses during COVID. That was interesting. We did the masks and everything. We were safe. We were very socially distanced, and we were lucky to have an awesome realtor that was conscious of these things. So she would alternate what houses she showed on what days. So we never were in a house that someone else had seen that day, which made it, very difficult to try to cram in all the houses that you want to see when you're looking. But it was serendipitous that we found this place. So we were about to give up because everything was out of our price range or in our price range and just terrible. And then I thought, what the hell? I'm going to check one last time on one of the sites that we were looking at. And this place ended up looking perfect. It looked too good to be true. And I was like, Mel, I don't know. I have a feeling about this one. Like we just gave up, and it was a shot in the dark, but this thing checks all the boxes. I mean, I think we should look at it. It's at a reasonable price. There's no way this is going to stay up here. And so we took a look at it, and we fell in love with it immediately. We didn't even really need to look around. And our realtor was cool and knew the stuff that we should look at. And she said the same thing. She's like, if you guys want this, you should probably get it. And so we got it. There was a couple concerns though, and that was the basement. So a little caveat for this is I was starting to kind of get back on my feet here with, getting Sisyphean Complex going, doing my art stuff. And I was looking to kind of make a smooth transition into the place. So this was like, all right, picking myself up. I'm back to work. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to take this little break to move and finish the basement so that I could set up a studio down there. And that's going to be awesome. And so we wanted to be extra sure. So we had an inspector come and look at the basement. We had a mason come and look at the basement, because we wanted to make sure that this thing is, airtight, watertight. We're not going to have any problems, right? So everybody signed off on it. They're like, yeah, I mean, if this was mine, I'd finish it, no problem. So I was like, great, cool, awesome. So we move in and I start work. I get maybe about 5 days worth of like really intense, back to my days as a construction worker, work in, sealing this thing, cleaning everything up, getting stuff ready to finish it, and throw down flooring, get the whole thing set so that I got a proper studio in here. And then we get some rain, and it turns out we got a leak. Okay, I thought this was nice. I thought this was not going to be a problem. I guess it's a problem. All right, so what do we do for a basement leak? So I had to go and look up how to fix basement leaks. Then we get another rain, and we get another leak. Oh, okay, 2 of them. All right, well, I better get, a couple gallons of that stuff instead of the one, because it looks like we got another leak. And then we get another rain, and another rain, and another rain. And it turns out we got 9 leaks. Like, this, is our house even going to stay up anymore? What's happening? There's literally water pouring in. What the hell? We're talking to the neighbors, and they're like, we don't know what's happening. Like, it's never leaked. Like, the guy that used to live there was gone for like a year. I watched the place. He wanted me to check it because he was trying to sell it. I never saw water. I don't know what's happening. So a 1-month project turned into a 5-month project to sum that up. I don't need to bore you with the details of construction and sealing a basement, but it took a while. It took a while to get things done proper, to wait for the right temperature and humidity and everything so that the chemicals would actually bond properly and I would actually get a good seal. Needed to wait for the rain to stop and actually have dry days so that I could dig up the outside around the foundation to seal that. And oh boy, so that was nuts. And that kind of brought me to, where I'm at now, which was a lot longer than I'd anticipated, having troubles to just make my stinking comics. My 5 years is damn near up at this point. And it was rough, man. It was rough. I was really depressed for a while, thinking about even trying to pick up the pieces. I didn't even get into some of the other kind of things that were going on. There's more dominoes to this chain effect, but there's just so many that I'm even losing track at this point. But the long and short of it, to kind of encapsulate it all, is during this time, during that period in our last apartment when things were getting really bad and I was really starting to lose my grip and have some troubles, some stuff came up in our family. And I learned some things about my grandfather, which led me to learn some things about some aunts and uncles and other people who have dealt with various mental illnesses that my family never talked about, because you don't talk about that kind of stuff. So I decided to go into therapy and look into some of this stuff. I got a lot of answers that I had not had in my life that, I'm sure you could relate. I'm sure all of you could relate if you ever experienced anything like that. Kind of sends you through a range of emotions. And so I was dealing with that during all of this. And to sum that up so that I could stop talking, because I do this, I tend to talk a lot.
You're our guest, Mike. It's your job to talk. I have the problem of over talking on these shows, so don't you worry about talking.
Well, the sum of it is that, going through all that, I've reached a point now where I even had some troubles with that as well. So I'd lost hope on everything. I'd lost hope on getting any help with the mental health side of things. I'd lost hope on comics and art and even community. I'm not going to get into it at all out of respect for you guys and for the other person involved, but I even felt really like alienated from the hundreds because of some stuff, and that hit me really hard too, because I really felt like I lost my tribe through that. And so I felt like, after the basement is like, just fill up. Just let's not even fix it. Just fill up. I'm gonna lay here. Let me just be done. But I fixed the basement, and then we had this massive monsoon here for about a week. The worst rainfall that this area has seen in 100 years. Our basement didn't leak. Meanwhile, bricks are falling out all around us. People are taking out couches and rugs and stuff. I was like, yes, there was a win. It was worth it. I did a good thing. Awesome. So that felt good. And then shortly after that, I ended up in the emergency room for something absolutely not a big deal, but it was frightening. I didn't know what was happening to me. Turns out I was having a panic attack on top of something that was minor, but that led to a chain reaction where I had a follow-up with a brand new doctor that wasn't like any of the other doctors that I'd seen that weren't helping me along with the mental health stuff. So I had a therapist that was like, all right, cool, you got this, this, and this. Let's treat it with this. But I met doctors that were like, well, that doesn't exist, or I don't believe in that, or maybe you should go to church more, instead of addressing it from a scientific perspective like my psychologist was. But this guy was, and this guy helped me. So between the basement and this new doctor, I've proven to myself that sometimes you go in a weird little direction and you got to do some extra work or a different thing, but it's for the best. You know, you solve a problem that could have been bigger later, you know. And I've also seen that with help and with the right kind of support, that things can change, things can be different. And especially now getting treatment for this stuff that I didn't even know I had, that helps everything else, because sometimes, depending on what you got going on, mental illness can kind of really affect your perspective on things. And I found for me that is 100% the case. Me untreated, you know, just seal me up in a dark little pit. I don't want to deal with it. There's no hope. Me being treated, I'm a completely different person, literally. I mean, I'm the same person, but my thoughts match my actions, and what I feel makes sense. It's in proportion to the things that are happening, instead of maybe, you know, falling into a pit of despair and not knowing any way to get out of it, you know. I like to think of it kind of like, to really oversimplify it, but the kinds of things that I'm affected by is sort of like, you know, your brain works in a sense like a dartboard. Everybody's does. And, you know, you've got neurons and chemicals and other things that are supposed to make things happen. And so I look at those like darts, and your darts are sort of like your intention. Like, I want a bullseye, clearly. And this is, you know, my dart is my intention. I'm going to throw it at the dartboard. And most people can hit the dartboard, and maybe they don't get the bullseye every time, but it's on the board and they accumulate points. With mental illness, you don't have a dartboard. It's like you got a brick wall or a wooden wall. It kind of varies, you know.
Yeah.
It's a lot less likely for your intention to actually go where it's trying to go and actually stick. And right now, getting treatment, I feel like I still don't have a dartboard, but I have a cork board. You know, I've put some cork up there. I'm still not getting points, but my intentions are at least sticking, and I'm able to do the things that I'm setting out to do, instead of, you know, allowing my brain to pilot itself into oblivion.
Yeah.
But that makes a big difference, and a huge difference. So to kind of just, man, that was a long ramble, but to kind of cap up, you know, that's where I'm at. That's the brief version, man. That's the brief version of this.
The condensed, yeah.
Through, and kind of like, you know, I've lived to tell the tale, to say like, hey, I'm in a much, much better place now. And I don't know, my takeaways has everything in the world to do with mental health. And
yeah.
I've been saying a lot lately that I really, really, really wish that I knew what I know now way sooner. It would have made a lot of these things a little different. Even the worst things. I mean, some of the things I went through are objectively suck, and there is no, you know, better way to go about it, really. But the mental kind of perspective that I had, the attitude, how I dealt with it, how I framed my world and my sense of self and everything could have been different, you know. And that's really the bigger takeaway, you know. It's a perspective thing more than anything.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely so I've experienced, you know, severe depression and stuff, and I'm suspecting now it's might be possibly linked to autism. I had like my first assessment today, like official assessment thing, and then they have to like talk with all the different people and do their thing, and I'll probably hear back in like 2 weeks, or I'll have to do a follow-up call because they probably won't call, but whatever. Anyhow, the point being, what I have noticed though, when I'm like, especially when I'm really struggling with like depression, which I haven't in a while, but it's still kind of I think this is most people who deal with anxiety or severe depression. It's kind of like a lingering thing that will likely come back, and you kind of need to be aware of it, because it'll be like this annoying. It's like this annoying friend who's going to show up, and you're like, I didn't invite you to this party, and they're like, but I'm here. Like knowing who that is like really helpful, because then you can be like, oh, hey, like Steve or whatever his name is, it's like that's the guy I got to kind of steer clear from. But one of the things I think it's, first off, like totally, Keith said, good for you for getting treatment. That's huge.
Thanks.
Because there's a lot of,
I was nervous about talking about it, because man, mental health is actually kind of a taboo, It still is.
Yeah, there's a lot of like in our society, there's a lot of like kind of like, well, just like pull your bootstraps up or whatever, and like just kind of get through it and grit your teeth and bear it. And it's like there's a bit of that, but like there are certain mental conditions that if you try that approach, you're just gonna like spiral, And so it's like we need help with those things, and so seeking help and just being vulnerable enough to do that is huge. Also, just like whenever I've been in like those darker spaces, I'll like start doing like list-based thinking, where it's like all the events you just described, like instead of seeing those as like separate events that just kind of happened and like they suck, but like they're separate. What I do when I'm like kind of in a depressive state is I'll like link them all together. And so when the next thing happens, I'll be like, oh, here it is again. And then I'm on the freeway and somebody cuts me off and I'm like, I knew it. It's the curse. It's like that kind of thing.
You use that exact term. Yeah. I'm up. I'm cursed. I mean, of course this would happen. I'm cursed. And
it becomes this kind of strange scenario where, Frank, we'd be more than happy to have you talk about mental health experiences, man. Sorry, Frank mentioned that in the chats. And then Gary actually said therapy is the best thing I've done for myself, better than getting a degree, better than chasing certain career goals. It's something almost anyone would benefit from. Yeah, I think like it's just like it's a hugely important thing. And I think more than anything, I think it's important like for all of us as just human beings to like have a better understanding of ourselves, so we can be better to the people around us, and like better to if I become a better person, I become a better husband, and I become a better artist and a better father, and like it's all kind of interlinked. But a lot of that doesn't happen if you can't even tell what's wrong. Like you're like, I don't know, like you were describing. If you're like you're kind of like, okay, here's my intentions. They're aligning with like good stuff, and then like it's just missing the board every time. Sometimes you need help to kind of see the board, and I think that's really cool. Yeah,
like a great example. I'm 100% for therapy now. I kind of wasn't in the past, and I say that with a caveat because I know it's expensive. I can't even afford it, so I'm not even doing it anymore. Right? I did it for a short period, and that was already profound enough. So if you can find a way, definitely do it. The reason I couldn't afford it though is I had to see a specialist. There was one person that is in this area that deals with the kind of disorder that I have, or disorders, and that was a very specific person that deals with A, B, and C at the same time that could help me. But I digress. What I'm getting at is you don't know what they can help you with until you go to them for help. Like this guy, oh man, we were on a journey, and he was just invested in trying to figure out how he could help me do the things that I was trying to do. And so, for example, I would come to him with commissions that I was working on, and I would try to be more cognizant of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And I would show him and explain to him what I was trying to do in the piece, in the work, and when I would get stuck, what I would get frustrated on, when I would start to get stuck in like a cycle where I'm looking for endless reference, or I'm trying to fix a thing like 15,000 times instead of just letting it go, or whatever. Things that to me were just frustrating and annoying. I'm just like, I don't know, this happens sometimes, this sucks. I think this might have something to do with my childhood. I don't know. Can you help me? But he reframed it for me and was able to like just dissect the psychology of the situation. Like, oh, well, when you're doing that kind of activity, is that something that's difficult for you? Well, yeah, it's difficult. That's why I'm having trouble with it. Okay, but in what way? What's difficult about it? Okay, well, it actually requires a lot of like geometry and measuring and, you know, trying to figure out perspective and crap that's really like just intense. And he's like, okay, well, when you're doing something like that, you're using a lot more cognitive function. And he would get really detailed in his descriptions about what parts of the brain are more needed for that kind of task or this and that, and able to like really break it down for me. Like, well, you have trouble with this kind of thing. And, you know, when you do that kind of thing, then that's why you aren't, you know, you're getting frustrated or you're stopping or you're wanting to do this or that. So when that happens, do this. And like, it was like mental gymnastics. It was crazy how much he was able to infer just from those little things. Like, oh, I just think I'm getting frustrated, but no, he's showing me these things connect. This is the same thing as when I spill the coffee or whatever. But he's trained. He's learned and all that stuff. He can make those connections. I couldn't. And once I kind of knew what it was that I was dealing with, now I'm making those connections and I could see those things. And I have tools that like, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe I just shouldn't do this thing anymore. This sucks and I don't enjoy it and it's difficult for me and it never won't be. So moving on, find a different way, you know? But yeah, that's just, I don't know, more advocacy for that kind of thing, because you have no idea how they could help you until you allow them to try to help you and throw stuff at them, you know, give them stuff, be specific what it is. If it's art stuff, even tell them. You'd be surprised how much that I learned about how my brain is involved in art. I'm a very like from the heart kind of artist. I just go with the flow, whatever. But no, your brain is actually doing all that stuff.
I got to introduce our other guest, which is
I didn't even see. I was
amazing.
I had my head buried down.
Yeah, Roz wanted to jump in and say hi to everybody.
Aw. Hi, Roz. How you doing?
She's a little sexist, so I expect her to be screaming any moment now.
She's just like, I can't stand you guys. Well, I mean, you got to smash the patriarchy there, man. So like, oh my gosh, that she's so cute. I think that's actually really nice to have that in here too, because like the thing that I think is so important about having just like open conversations about things like mental illness, and like I wrote, you know, a book that does that, so obviously this is of interest to me. But it's like I really believe in people being public and speaking about these kind of things, because at the end of the day, like, you know, there was a point in my life where I might have like with like a split-second decision, you know, ended the whole thing, and not have even known like being a father and like experiencing like what Corey's experiencing right now. Like that is a really cool thing, and that wouldn't have even existed in my life like were it not for like kind of getting through and working through those issues. And it's like I do think there's a lot of people who want clear-cut, very easy answers. I'm a person with like faith, and I don't think that's going to solve all your problems at all in life. I think if that's what you're going to it for, you're probably going to be really, really disappointed, or you might have a mental illness still, right? But it's like there are like experts out there. Like I can imagine, like if we, you know, with my son who had delayed speech, right? Like what would have happened if I had just been like, well, we're just going to pray this away. Like that's not going to really solve the underlying issue where he needed speech therapists and, you know, like people who are experts on it to help him get through it. And what's cool is by doing that, hey, guess what? It's just kind of like, I just really value people speaking about that openly. And I think that's really cool that you've talked about your path with it too, and your walk with it. And I know that's also, it's funny because it's like a vulnerable thing to do, which is always a little uncomfortable. And so I appreciate that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I'm still not 100% comfortable with like getting too specific.
That's okay.
But you know, I also feel it's important too, and it's something. It's funny because when I was doing the hundreds videos, I was very open about it, and I think it's because I'll end with this for my kind of chunk, and then I'm really anxious to hear what everyone else has to say about this stuff. But the thing that was really difficult, but also has been an important thing, is in my hundreds videos, I talked a lot about depression. And I mean, you and I have talked a lot about depression on the Artcasters several times. It's something that I've dealt with for a long time. And something that was really profound for me was having that diagnosis be pulled back. So the current scenario, the current situation for me, as 3 doctors agree so far, is that it's more likely a comorbid situation. That kind of depression that I experience may not be that genetic, chronic, clinical depression, that it may actually just be depression as a result of the symptoms of these other disorders, frustration with these other disorders manifesting as depression. And man, so I think a lot of it for me, for the uncomfortableness of talking about stuff, is because depression and me, I mean, we've been pals forever. I've known him since I was, whatever. Like, he's always here. Let's talk about him. But the actuality, the real stuff that I'm dealing with is new. And I think that makes it even more vulnerable, because I don't know how I feel about it yet. I don't know where it stands or what place it's going to really have in my life, or how it changes things yet. And so it makes it a little bit more, I guess, more vulnerable, more uncomfortable to talk about. But I know I will get there, because mental health is something that is important to me. And I think everybody should be, I believe people should be more open about it, because it's very stigmatized. It's very, as I've learned since moving down here, there's people that flat out will just not believe you. And that is crazy, to try to get help from people like that in a situation like that. Is, man, that was like one of my worst fears, actually, in going through with the therapy, is that I would get diagnosed and that I would run into something like that. Because after I had learned about my family, my grandfather, my uncles, my aunts, and things of that nature, I started digging. I started doing research on my own before committing to getting officially diagnosed or taking all these tests and stuff. My God, you've just gone through it all.
Well, I haven't gone through I'm like midway through my process, but everything you're saying resonates. Like what you were just describing about, it's one thing to kind of have depression and think like, well, I'm prone to depression. And then it's another to like start having a realization that those things might stem from another totally separate disorder, and just sort of the alienation and separation you feel from like average, like neurotypical people. And I think that's a really profound thing. And I also like, well, I think people should be open about speaking about things. Also, like, I mean, your own medical health and history and stuff, people should just share what they're comfortable with. Like if like if you are somebody who suffers from depression and you don't want to talk to people about it, like, I think it helps, but I don't think it's for everybody to like, I don't wish everybody to like go out and write like autobio comics or do like, videos about it. So I just appreciate like what you are comfortable sharing. And I think that's really cool. And what a cool journey. Because like the neat thing is, if like at the root of depression and other kind of issues is like this other issue, then, like trying to, it's almost like trying to kind of prune a plant or something, and you've got the wrong plant. It's like not even the right root. And at least if you can get to the root, you can get to the root of the problem. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. And then Keith Harper said, me and my black dog are old pals. We get together and tell each other how much we hate each other. I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Anyhow, so that's cool. So have you been so you've gone through the whole process and you're sort of learning about it, or is it's sort of an ongoing?
Man, it's going to be ongoing for a while.
Yeah.
Because there's resources out there specifically for, kids versus adults that have what I've got. And the adult stuff is way, way, way more limited than the children's stuff. Like, so this is something that even, I'm through the process. I've now been diagnosed by a psychologist and 2 separate medical doctors, because that's part of the process. Is you gotta, it could be your thyroid, or it could be, I don't know, the number of different stuff that they got to check. And so I've run the gamut on that. The only things that I wasn't able to do because of COVID at the time were the in-person cognitive tests. But a psychologist seems, I mean, in his opinion, and he's a specialist in the area, he only knew me for a short time and was already like very convinced and confident in moving forward with his diagnosis. And the route that we went, I went straight to the medical doctors, and the medical doctors started ruling out kind of other things. So however they do it, however they've determined, they've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that we're dealing with what we're dealing with. And I've started treatment on medication that's specifically for these things, and it is working. It is absolutely 100% working. And
that's a good sign. Yeah.
Side effects that I may experience if something else were the case are happening at all. I mean, that's awesome. Life-changing. Even Mel is just like, my God, like you're like a different person. You're like the same person, but like, I don't know. I don't know how it feels for her, but she kind of describes it as like she can see in me a lot of like just more clarity, less tension. I feel more like in control of everything. And I mean, man, I've been tested too. There's been so many little things that have happened that normally would go a whole different direction that I'm on top of it. I'm just good, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. But
I think
medication isn't the only thing. There's like a saying, pills don't teach skills. And so something that I have to do now is taking advantage of the treatment. Now I have to try the other stuff that I've tried. So now I got to try to develop an exercise routine, get a better, habit building kind of system going on, get more of a schedule, try to make a plan, and calculate how long it's going to take me to do stuff. All these things that I've had trouble with, now's the time to try to do them, because then I have a much better chance of it sticking and being more of a long term and actually, following through, which is kind of one of my bigger problems. All kinds of things. It's crazy how much can be affected by something. And if you don't know, you have no idea what you're even looking for. You kind of take things for granted, or you get down on yourself or feel bad and, I'm just stupid or whatever. But once you are able to contextualize it and frame it and understand where that's coming from, man, I liken it to the stages of grief in a way.
Yeah.
I've had to learn some limitations that I didn't want to believe I had, that I've been fighting against for my whole life. But the acceptance part has been cool, because now I know what I can do, and I can apply more pressure in those areas and get better results I'm seeing. So
it also allows for a lot more self-forgiveness, because and that's not to say excuses. There's the difference between, because the only reason I say that is some people would think like of self-forgiveness as like the hippy dippy thing where it's like an excuse for like, oh, that's okay that I didn't, eat well today because I'm a good person. Like we're not talking about that kind of thing. It's more like just like forgiving yourself for your own quirks and differences, and the thing that's again another weird misnomer I think in society, and I want to hear everybody else because I've totally been a lot. I want to hear Scott and Corey too, to see if they've had anything like this and sort of how they've dealt with it. But for me, it's always been like, it's nice to realize you have a little bit of control over the car, as opposed to like feeling like you're a passenger that's just being kind of driven. And also to realize like if your car is a little weird, it's not you're driving a beat up old Honda or something when everybody's driving like a Benz, like, and your car kind of shorts a couple times. You realize like, oh, this is my car. It's not like I didn't decide for that to, and there's something about that, like being able to actually that helps you be able to like navigate, because you're like, okay, I just need to carry like spark plugs in the car, or whatever it is. Like, just knowing what you're working with is super enlightening and also scary, and it is a weird journey. Like for me with the autism thing, I've still been like, I don't know where I land on it. They asked during the assessment too, where they're like, how will you respond if you don't have it, or if you do have it? And I'm like, I don't really know. Like, I still don't even know if I want to know. Like, I've been curious long enough to like where I feel like I need to rule it out or find it out. Like, and it definitely seems like something I'm pretty convinced of, but I'm also aware that cognitive bias can exist. So it's like, I don't want to be that guy who's like, maybe I'm totally wrong. So I think, I don't know, that's been really helpful for me, but I don't know, like, have you guys had struggles like that? I mean, like, I do think this can tie really heavily into like some of what Scott's been doing lately with the leadership courses, because I think a lot of what you're talking about kind of ties in with that kind of thing, where I think about kind of taking ownership of your life and taking ownership of like what you can do and also your viewpoint. And I think I definitely would say, Scott, are your leadership courses telling you to make like lists of wrongs that happen to you? I'm curious. Like, I'm curious how things. How that.
I don't know if that's in reference to something else, but no, I mean, what they do is, but it basically, it's all about your whole life is informed by what happened to you from the age 0 to 8. And how that informed your life, and recognizing, that you don't necessarily change. You identify certain things, and then you're able to shift. Like for one thing, that's really helped me tremendously, and this keeps popping. I used to get just so frustrated when, working on a task or something and it's not going your way, and you get frustrated, and to the point where I'm like screaming at a TV monitor, or just things that just aren't helping. And it's basically taking a step back and saying, okay, this keeps happening. This keeps showing up. Why is this showing up in my life? And like you said, it's taking responsibility. Even things that you normally wouldn't think that you're responsible for. Like, so for instance, my phone, like I'm trying to make a phone call and my phone isn't, I can't get through to anyone. It's not, my service is down or whatever. And whether this is like an actual thing, or whether it just gives you an opportunity to look at your own life through this lens, saying, okay, so I'm not able to connect. Why? What is that? How is that showing up in my life? How am I not connecting to other people? How are things breaking down in my life? And just that gives you the opportunity to think about that. And it's just helpful because then you start to think about, okay, well, here's some things that I can do differently, and just reframing the problem and finding a solution to everything. So, yeah, but in regards to what Mike was saying, kind of once you have that realization of, for good or bad, or like what you're talking about with your assessment, you haven't got that yet, Josh, but when you do, whatever the case is, it's going to be a relief. I think, and then you move on from there. You kind of get this bit of enlightenment. I mean, and then so for Mike, it's kind of getting this diagnosis and everything, and then you say, okay, well, now I'm in a place where I know what the issues are. How do I work with it? How do I get beyond this? And what's the next chapter? So, and that's kind of what I'm curious now with Mike is what is sort of, now that you've got this, what are you going to take from that? And what is the next chapter? What are you working on now? What are the next steps, knowing what you know?
So I'm kind of at a point now, because I'm a month into treatment now. So now I just had my last follow-up appointment with my doctor to see how medication's going to play a role, if it's going to play a role. And so we finally got to the point now where it's official. This is working. This is what we're going to go with for the next 6 months. So nice. That's a huge milestone. because I was kind of hesitant to make any kind of major plans, because with any kind of this sort of medication for mental stuff, it has that potential to kind of get worse before it gets better. You know, maybe you got weird side effects or mood swings or whatever.
Yeah, or you have like the first 2 week where you're like, everything's wonderful, and then it's like, you know, like, yeah.
Totally. So now things have kind of leveled out, and we've seen that this is going to work, and that the dosage is right, and everything's cool. So now I'm a little bit more free to kind of start to make those plans.
Yeah,
that was literally a couple days ago. So tentatively, my current plan is to just finish this commission that I'm doing, which is a freaking awesome opportunity that I've got, which is a little side story, but
is this the Giger style thing, or is this a different one?
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that.
I've been enjoying the hell out of that, and it's funny because I don't know how many of us will admit to having like a massive Giger phase when we were younger, but it's
big time.
I swear, like when you
I've
showed me
got
those,
Necronomicon, I got Alien. I mean, I'm kind of jealous because my brother went to Sweden and he went to there's like I think like a Giger bar and all the whole
I've seen
thing
pictures of that.
Yeah.
I also will say, for anybody who's a fan of Giger stuff, you should check out Paul F. Tompkins doing I think it's him doing H.R. Giger. It's either him, it's somebody from Comedy Bang Bang. It may not actually be Paul F. Tompkins, but I think it is. And but it's so good. It's just look up Comedy Bang Bang H.R. Giger.
Oh,
it's good times.
I'm gonna check that out.
Oh yeah, it might be a fun soundtrack while you're working too.
Yeah,
because it's like one of them's like the premise. Like I'll just give you the premise of the bit.
Weird, dude.
The premise of the bit is that he's like a guy stuck in like a family sitcom kind of situation where he's got like a kid who's like a dissatisfied teenager going through like teenage stuff, like whatever, dad, and then like a wife who's like a happy homemaking kind of wife, and his son, like it's like. Basically, like, what if H.R. Giger had a kid and then he's going and he needs like permission to go on a school field trip, and so he'd be like, "Dad, can you sign this like release form?" And it's like, "I don't know, is the son black?" And like it's just like all these weird, like dark, like twists on everything where it's like it's so good. Anyhow, yeah, worth checking out. Sorry,
sounds awesome.
Yeah, but that could be a soundtrack. Well, so you're working on that thumbnail or the commission. And I've seen the thumbnails in the roughs. You guys should be following Mike so you can check them out. But they're really cool. It looks really rad.
Yeah, I'm still working on that. And so just a quick thing about that. That actually was so when we moved here, there was a problem with the flooring, and we were looking into replacing it. And it's like super rare flooring now that was crazy popular in the 90s. So to find it is one, difficult, and two, expensive if you can find it. So we were kind of bummed out about it. Long story short, I found some at a semi-reasonable price on Facebook Marketplace for like the local kind of, basically like an eBay on Facebook. And we were negotiating the price and stuff with the guy. He just did like a demo thing on an old house, so he had a bunch of it. And we couldn't really agree on the price, so I kind of left it on, let me talk to my wife and I'll get back to you. And then like 15 minutes later, he's like, "Hey, you know what, man? I was checking out your profile on Facebook, and you got some badass art, dude. How about you just do me a piece and we call it even?" I'm like, yeah, cool.
For
great.
Flooring, that's huge, dude. That's a very nice trade, because I'm like, we're actually currently like saving for something like that. So that's
expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
But I jumped into it not even thinking about how that could be a horrible mistake. Like maybe this guy's into like weird furry fetish, like incest porn or something. I don't know what he's gonna ask me to draw. I just agreed.
Oh no.
Tough,
That could be interesting.
I don't know. But he ended up being super cool. We went out to pick up the flooring, and he had a bunch of like band posters and stuff in his shop. He does like metal work where he designs these crazy, like basically Giger-esque kind of metal sculptures that he welds to like motorcycles and stuff. It's awesome. He's a cool
so
dude.
Badass, yeah.
And like all the bands that he's into are bands that I dig. He had like a giant Tool poster on the wall. I'm like, oh man, dude, like whatever this guy's gonna ask me to draw is gonna be up my alley. This was a good deal.
And until he tells you like the only thing I like are like Tool's last 2 albums. I'm sorry, everything before that was trash, and you're like, I don't know if I trust you, sir. Sorry.
Or he's like really into My Little Pony or something.
The 2 things I like are like Tool and Rod Stewart's solo career. Wait, what?
No, luckily it was not the case.
Yeah.
He messaged me a few days later and he told me that he was looking for something kind of like a pin-up mixed with like a H.R. Geiger kind of thing, and if I would be down for something like that. I was like, dude, yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like right up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
And conveniently, it was something that I was already like feeling nostalgic about that period in my life. I used to do tons of dark art kind of stuff, and
yeah,
it wasn't a phase. It was that was what I was into, and that's what I kind of went out into the world with when I was looking for jobs. And I applied at a few places that did like, you know, commercial spots and stuff for some of the Marvel properties. Like they do Spider-Man, but they do like Spider-Man mac and cheese. But it sounded like a cool place, but they were not interested in what I had to offer with my weird disturbed art. So I kind of like tucked it under my wing and, you know, sadly walked off and tried to find more commercially viable kind of styles and stuff. So for someone to say, hey, I want you to do this thing, it was like, yes, you, sir, have got the golden ticket. You don't even know what you're getting. I am so happy that somebody wants this from me. So anyways, yeah, he's getting way more than even what we bargained for. This is the largest piece I've ever done. It's going to be 18 by 24 instead of the usual. It's probably like half the size of what you're working on, Josh, but for me, it's huge.
18 by 24 is about, what do I do? I
Really?
think it's somewhere, I can't remember, but it's...
I thought you worked on like half a sheet of drywall or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do also do pages on the walls of my house. So that's actually why we need our flooring changed, because it's like I've just been drawing.
Those are for
I
the
need the
covers
floor.
and stuff.
Yeah, I have to do page 2 sometime. But that's awesome. That's cool. It is looking really, really good. And I mean, you go all out in your commissions anyway, so I think it's going to be pretty amazing.
I'm embracing that now instead of fighting it too.
That's rad.
But yeah, sorry, Scott, I got off on another tangent.
Yeah.
The commission's kind of the first and foremost thing, and then after that, Sisyphine Complex. I'm going to dive back in. I have kind of a new game plan for it. I'm going to take a short period of time to basically experiment. I want to whip out some pages that I'm not going to share, but just to kind of test what kind of style, what kind of line quality, all that kind of stuff that I can do in a reasonable amount of time. Not quick, because I have, this is as much of like an art project for me as it is a comic. I want it to look cool, but I do need to get it done. And so I'm going to take a short time to figure that out and then kind of get into it. And then on the side, yeah, this would be a fun mystery if anyone wants to try to go down this rabbit hole. I've actually created a pen name for myself purely for like the things that kind of tread a line a little bit. 'Cause I have been dabbling in kind of more erotic or at least suggestive kind of stuff, mostly for my comic. It's all research, actually. It's basically about, well, whatever. You'll see when you read it. But the byproduct of that is that I've got really into making that kind of stuff, actually. I actually enjoy it. There's something about it that I like, and it comes kind of more naturally. I don't have to think as hard about it. It's just I like drawing sexy people doing sexy things. So I'm not going to share what that name is because I want it disassociated from my account. It's its own little experiment that I'm trying to grow on its own, which is actually kind of doing pretty well. But I'm going to use that as more of the business side of things for me while I take the time to do my comic. So for that account, for that kind of persona, I'm going to be trying to roll out some more product-oriented kind of art to sell in like T-shirts and stickers and patches and whatnot. So yeah, very very interesting kind of chapter right now, but I feel like it was the best thing that I could come up with to attempt to have my cake and eat it too for this last year of my 5-year plan. And hopefully it works out. The goal is to get an issue out, and all I need is an issue to like kind of get this thing rolling. Whether it is that I decide to kickstart it and go that route or take it to a publisher, either way, I need content. I need an issue. I need pages. I need to show people and see if they're interested and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm not planning any further because I don't think I'm capable of planning any further. I've learned, so that's where it is. Short-term goals for Mike here on out.
Nice.
I have long-term goals, but I got to turn them into short-term projects. So
yeah, that's cool. For the alternate account thing, just a tip, like check out and Corey will hate that I'm recommending this, but there's this guy Benjamin Mara, and he did this amazingly awesome terrible comic called Night Business, and I highly recommend all cartoonists check it out because it's awesome. It's like you can look at it and it is almost so. Yeah, it's almost so authentic that you would think it's like not a parody, but then like you look closer at it and you're like, oh, this guy actually went to art school. He's doing this on purpose. You know, it's pretty amazing. But hilarious. One of the cool things is he went all in on like the persona that made those comics too. And so he'd do like author bios where he's like wearing like furs and like drinking whiskey and just like smoking a cigar. And he's just like, or he'd be like holding the guns with like airplanes flying over him and stuff. So
that's awesome.
I'm just saying, might be a tip with that. Just like you can lean in and just have like a whole persona like with bio photos and everything. That'd be amazing.
I've thought of it. There's a performative part of me that has an itch that it needs to scratch sometimes.
I'm not saying I haven't thought of that either. Like if I ever did the alternate persona like an art route, I would totally do that because that's why I mentioned it, because I'm like, oh man, if you're gonna do fulfill my dream for like, it sounds really fun and awesome. There's so much
that a little bit during the hundreds with my Future Mike thing where I was doing kind of the special effect intros and stuff. I played around with it a little bit with that. And I actually considered coming back to YouTube during the pandemic because it would have been a totally missed opportunity. It's gone now and it won't happen. But there was a line that I said in one of the videos. I was, because Future Mike was sort of like the Jiminy Cricket of that sort of series. He was the one that was in my head trying to motivate me, like, hey, you got to finish Space Cat, And he had dropped a line at one point when I got really extravagant that was, you have to finish Space Cat. If you don't finish Space Cat, the whole world's going to fall apart. And so then I thought, what a perfect time to come back. I'll come back
as so
Future
true.
Mike. Like, what, you screwed it up, you asshole. What did you do?
Could have been like, thanks for COVID, jerk. Thanks for COVID.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, now we know who to hold responsible for the whole pandemic. So I just wanted to.
Space Cat, and I'm sorry. I didn't.
That's pretty amazing, though. That would be awesome, and you should return to YouTube at some point because it would be cool. I am really enjoying what you're posting. I encourage everybody to check that out. I feel like Corey didn't get to chime in on the stuff. So, Corey, do you kind of have any experiences that resonate with this, and how did you sort of? If so, like, how did you handle it and kind of move forward and continue the fight of like making art?
I feel like I've told this story like 100 times, but like getting into illustration for me was kind of that kind of, like I was just kind of getting into it. But then recently I've been moving away more from like the toxic thinking about creativity into more like healthy thinking about creativity. And I don't think, I think I really was being like legitimately authentic. And I think it's just taken me a few years to kind of like work through stuff. But I mean, I've jokingly and mostly seriously said that like I use art to self-medicate. And that's been, like good. And it's, but I went through the hand thing. I'm still kind of coming out of it. I like have a foam roller that I use like 4 or 5 times a day just to like, make it through the day. But like, I'm kind of at the tail end of that, but like, I've gotten to a point both like mentally and emotionally, where I can accept the quality of the work that I'm doing. And like, I'm somewhat pleased with what I've produced at times. Whereas before I would like measure the quality of the work that I'm doing, like how long it took me to hate it, and if it was like, I usually would hate it, while I was doing it. And then, if I hated it like a couple hours later or the next day, that was a better piece, and if it was something that I didn't hate for like a week or something like it, that was a really good one. And I think I've improved in my art too. I mean, I've only been drawing now for about 8 or 9 years. And it was kind of an experiment. I said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to give it 10 years. And if at the end of 10 years, I don't like where I ended up, then I'll go do something else. Which I guess when you're 32 is whatever, but when you're 41, it's like, yeah, that's a good amount of time to do. It's a quarter of your life. But I have decided that I enjoy where I've ended up in my skill set, in my abilities. I'm still coming to grips with like pricing appropriately if I'm counting my current job like hourly. I don't think I'm quite at minimum wage, but I think I'm probably close to under that for having, just big numbers. Just they seem really big until you're like, oh, but that's, 4 months of your life. And if you did 4 of these projects that way, then, you would be making, like below the poverty line levels of income. So anyway, I'm kind of roundabout, kind of coming to a place where I'm like, I think once I can get out from under this client work and get some space and be able to do some of my own things, which I haven't been able to really do this year.
You also have, like another newborn child too, so that can complicate that a little, the time thing a little bit.
I just want to point out that like it would have been really helpful to be handed the baby in the last 15 minutes when I'm just waiting for my computer to render this scene, rather than prior to that when I was trying to finish animating that scene. So timing doesn't really work, because literally right now I just have to sit here and wait for my computer to chunk away on this thing. Now would have been great, but
that's how it goes.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
Babies and the juggling usually does not come at your own discretion.
Yeah. So anyway, I think, I like where I am right now, and I feel like getting out from under like the client work that I'm doing and stuff. Because I've got about 6 T-shirts lined up and 2 more animations after this music video that are kind of on the docket, and so I'm probably booked out for like another 2 to 4 weeks. But after that, I really feel like I'll be in a headspace where I can like kind of enjoy making my own projects, which I think is probably the first time I've been able to do that.
It has been a bit,
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm talking about like the first time I've allowed myself like the mental and emotional capacity to like enjoy the process of making art for myself. Like I don't think I've ever been there. At least in the last 20 years, whether I used to be into photography and film and then design, and it was always a kind of a push towards getting really good and getting competitive and then earning as much as I could. And I'm at a spot now where it's like, I'm turning down work so that I can carve out space to enjoy the act of creation. And so I don't know how well that fits the topic, but that's kind of where my head and heart heart are right now, I think. So
Yeah, dude, I think that fits a lot because like for one thing, like mental health for creatives too does tie into like your own output. And what you're talking about, it's funny, the place that Pulp Fiction Comics place, one of the people who works there also runs a recording studio in Long Beach. She was super awesome. But she was talking about how like when she first started doing engineering, sound engineering, she'd like hate the process but like the result. And then it's kind of flipped for her where she's like really enjoying the process of doing it. And she was like, I'm so much happier lately because I like really enjoy the whole thing, like the whole experience of like engineering a song and stuff. And I was like, that's awesome because I just thought it was cool because it mirrored my own journey with art where I've more and more started actually enjoying the process and enjoyed even the way I work, where it's like I know I'm a systematic worker. And so it's like I really enjoy being able to work within my own system that I've designed, you know, where it's like, okay, this works really nicely for me, you know. I think that's really great for mental health. And I actually do find quite often creatives are really unhappy or struggling with, you know, things are also just not pursuing the things they feel like they're supposed to be pursuing. That's not always the case, but I do feel like that goes hand in hand too. So it's great that I don't know. It's encouraging to hear about you enjoying the process. I feel like it's something I have to remind myself of every once in a while, though, because there are times where I still hate the process. But in general, a lot less of those than in the old days, you know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has gone for like 2 hours, and I feel like it's been really cool and interesting and awesome to hear your journey and like just more about like kind of pursuing sort of ways to like sort of navigate and continue to make art. And I love that that's always an objective too. With you, Mike, like it's rarely only like, oh, I need to have this better for myself or whatever. It's usually also like, so that I can do art, make this thing, you know. And I think it's cool to me that fire's still there.
It
for
is,
that.
man. It is. I don't know. I've spent way too long trying to make this stuff work to not have it work. I know that might seem a little stubborn, but I've never hit a point until my hand injury where even the people closest to me in my life have felt like, well, maybe it's time, you know, maybe it's time to look at other options. So it keeps me going. If it weren't for that, I'd have quit a long time ago. But I really do have good support and people who want me to do well for many different reasons and who are, you know, also my biggest critics as well. So it keeps me honest, and that's where that fire comes from, man. I just have to. It just has to work. There's no other option. There's no other end to Mike's story.
I love that though. And I think that stubbornness, to me, I don't know. I rarely meet a creative who doesn't have it because at the end of the day, like, okay. So like, it can be very discouraging when you're doing these things. And every time you take a risk doing art, it's going to come with a huge possibility of disappointment. Right. So, right now we're shopping my other graphic novel, like my literary agent, right, to publishers. And we have an editor who's like severely interested. It's an indie publisher, but they have really good distribution and they're interested for the other book and they have some editorial feedback and stuff like that. And now they have to take it and see if they can get something to offer for it. Now, next week that could completely crumble. And it won't be the first time that's happened, right? If people aren't prepared for that kind of thing, like where you're really close, and then like at this point I've been through that process so many times that I'm like allowing myself to be a little excited, but I also know it's totally possible that the thing could fall apart. You have to kind of get comfortable with those ups and downs and also be really stubborn, because if like that first time it kind of like, oh, I put it out and it almost got there and then it fell apart or whatever, if that kind of thing is going to keep creatives down, oh no, where'd Mike go? I think we lost Mike.
I think he froze there for a minute.
Yeah. He's probably oh, there he is. Haha, we lost his connection. There we go. We got Mike back. You okay?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
fell into a
gotcha.
dark hole. I don't know. I was scared and lonely.
But yeah, so I feel like, there's so many ups. I mean, that was just one example I think of that's recent where it really requires a lot of fortitude, and I'm not trying to complain about it. It's a really cool thing. But a part of the game is like, if that falls apart, I have to keep up the pursuit of getting that thing out. If I don't, it'll never go out. So it's like and I think that requires like a stubbornness, and I think we all share that a lot with art, where it's like we're going to push and kind of make these things happen. And what's neat is by doing that, like you actually see things realize. And I know that sounds a little corny and stuff, but it's very much like Scott was talking about, where it's like you can kind of like take those opportunities as learning experiences and be like, okay, how can I make this happen in a different way? Like, what am I avoiding here? How can I improve what I'm doing? And I think that stubbornness is like a huge, like I would distrust an artist that's not stubborn with pushing their art, because you kind of have to be. But anyhow, wow, what a cool discussion. Thanks, Keenan. Keenan's about to bail, but it's been a long time. And we just have a really active chat. So thanks everybody who came to the chats. And
Corey really resonates too about enjoying it.
Yeah. Dude, that's huge. I think that's a huge thing. I just appreciate everybody who came to the chat. I think like the cool thing about Mike too is we had the similar thing with Frank when we had him on too. It's like Mike's definitely a community builder and a person who's kind of rallied the troops to kind of get art together and make things and active with people and really supports their work. I think Mike might have frozen. But it's just such an awesome thing to have you on, like for there. Are you there, Mike? Or are we gonna hear you?
I think I am.
Okay. Are you guys hearing that delay too, Corey and Scott?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure how to. Oh no! We've lost. Okay, poor Mike. Mike froze as I was praising Frank. Yeah, that's totally the scenario. Yeah, but like, so Mike, I think, is a person who like epitomizes like community building and stuff, and I think that's half of why so many people showed up in the chats too, for Mike. So I really want Mike to be here before we sign off, though. But oh, is that Mike? Okay, we have a second Mike. Oh my gosh, there's two mics. Look at this. This is future Mike.
What? Seriously, that guy? He's still here? What is happening?
Should we remove the?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Weird delay.
Oh,
I think we both hit remove at the same time. No, we can hear you well now.
Okay. So. Weird.
Oh no, there's still a delay.
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, connection's not the greatest.
It's okay. We've gone for like almost 2 hours, so I was just gonna say our sign offs and stuff. So while we have like a bit of a connection, oh no, Mike's gone again. I was like gonna say tell people where to find your work. I guess we might have to call it. Man, Mike's getting it's future Mike. It has messed with his connection. But anyhow, so we appreciate Mike coming on. You guys can find here we go. Okay. Mike, tell people where to find your work.
I don't even know where to find me anymore. Instagram. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Michael Emritz.
Yes.
Facebook, Sisping Complex. Yeah, I'm around. You can find me.
I love it. Okay, cool. And I highly recommend it. And thanks, Mike, for coming on. Sorry the connection started dropping toward the end, but that makes sense. It's probably just your internet being like, this is a very long Artcasters, buddy. But I really appreciate it, and I think it was valuable, and I think it was really cool. And Gary said, I am just like Jehovah.
Yeah, thanks for letting me go on. I always feel bad talking for too long, and I had a lot to say about what Corey said too, but it's all right. Yeah, it has to end sometime.
Yep. Well, maybe we'll do a part 2 on that, you know. Yeah, we really appreciated you being on here too, and it was really cool. And yeah, this is definitely a topic I think we'll all be pursuing and learning from. And then again, Jim was saying I am like Popeye, which I think is, I like all this I am riffing going on. Scott, oh wait, you go last because you have to tell us also. Corey, where can everybody find your work and all your awesome stuff?
Everybody can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. I'll give you a little preview of what I finished tonight. So
I've been watching you work on
there's that guy.
It's so cool.
And then here's this
amazing.
guy. So yeah,
Like
if my
the
computer
motion.
wasn't choking on everything. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's the
curse, Corey. The curse.
Yeah, that's what it is. Sorry, I was about to launch into another story. Yeah, you can find me at coreykerr.com. Just myname.com and whatnot. And one of these days I'm going to change that link to What's New Pussycat just to troll Josh even further. But if you click on What's New, you can see the newest stuff. And I show up on this show every once in a while called the Indie Review Show, where you can look at things. And that is an underviewed show, I feel like, for the content. So if you haven't watched some of that stuff, go look through the thumbnails and see if there's anything that you might be interested in, because Josh and I, and occasionally Gary, and one time Scott, but we'd like to have Mike and Scott on as well.
Yeah.
More, it's good stuff. So come check that out as well.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's awesome. And I would recommend you guys check out Gary's first, because he's actually better at the show than we are. And he'll be a guest on there, but he's so good at reviewing. So I'd start with like one of Gary's and then come to ours, and he'll make us look better. I'm kidding. Corey's good at it too. So if you guys haven't yet, go to Amazon. A full graphic novel for $2. I'm guessing most of you have already done it. If you want to stick it to Amazon, get another, give it to a friend or something, because it's $2 for a graphic novel. I would have trouble turning that down, even if it were like the worst graphic novel, but I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's a really great graphic novel. So yeah, go rock that business. And then other than that, Scott, how can people keep track of this crazy business we have, and how can they like sort of, it's weird, it bounces, the Artcasters bouncing from my channel, your channel, how are we supposed to keep track of that? But before that, I'm having trouble with my comics, and I wish there was something where I could like, sharpen up on some of the basics and learn some stuff, and maybe get some tools to help me with those comics. Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, well, it depends on what kind of trouble you're having. If you want personal help with that, I do have a Patreon, and I do coaching on there. There's a couple tiers on there for coaching, so that's more personal help. But also, if you don't want personal help, if you want to learn on your own, then you can go to my YouTube page my YouTube channel. It's Serkworks on YouTube, and I've got a series called Making Comics 101. It'll take you step by step how to make comics.
That sounds expensive. Is that an expensive series?
That
Scott?
one is not. No, it's not. It's free, actually. It's on YouTube. It's free. So, and there's just tons of videos on there. So definitely check that out. And I think Josh had mentioned something about tools and stuff. If you go to my website, I have a bunch of tools for making comics, and there'll be more coming soon. Digital tools and things that you can use to just help make comics better and faster. So definitely check those out. And let's see. And like the show, we're talking about the show. We do this show every single week, pretty much without fail, unless we take a little vacation for a week or whatever the case is, but usually every single week. And it goes, it's back. It kind of, like Josh said, it kind of bounces back and forth from my channel to his channel. We usually do it on a Thursday, but you never know. We may have to do it on a different day. And we always have a different guest on the show. If you want to know who the guest is going to be, what day we're going to be on, all that stuff, because YouTube isn't that great at letting people know that stuff or alerting people about it. The best way to do that is to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. Usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we will send out an invite, and with the link and everything, it'll tell you who the guest is going to be and all that stuff. And there's a link in the description of this video. If you click on that, it'll take you to where you can join the mailing list.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Everybody in the chats. Frank was asking a question that was a good tee up for Scott to promote his lettering, but I feel like at some point we got to get off of this thing. So but I have to say, like, we really appreciate that. Whenever, like, Frank is incredible at, like, just setting you up for your own self promotions, which is I've always appreciated that about him. And I think it's a really cool thing, and I want to try to return that favor and remember to return that favor to other people, because it's such a cool thing to do. All right, thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week, and also on Monday. Make sure you guys tune in to the Indie Review Show, because a guest we've had on the show, we're actually going to be going through David Chelsea in Love, which is his autobio book from, like, back in the day, that is out of print, but you can still catch it and get it. So I just definitely recommend people tune in on Monday for that. And we will see you guys otherwise next week. Goodbye.